Nathan Carter loved his new home. After years of saving and planning, he and his wife, Michelle, had finally moved into a cozy house on Maple Street. It wasn't too big, but it was perfect for them. The house had 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, where they could grow flowers, and most importantly, a spacious driveway that could fit 2 cars comfortably. For Nathan, the driveway symbolized freedom, a place where he could park his old pickup truck without worrying about finding street parking after work. But little did he know, this simple joy would soon become a source of endless frustration. The trouble began just 2 weeks after they settled in. One morning, Nathan woke up early to head to work. He walked outside, coffee mug in hand, only to find a bright red sports car blocking his driveway. The sleek vehicle gleamed under the morning sun, its shiny surface practically screaming wealth and arrogance. Nathan frowned, wondering whose car it was. He glanced around, hoping to see someone nearby who might explain why the car was parked so inconveniently. No one was around. He sighed and decided to wait. Maybe the owner had stepped out briefly and would return soon. So he went back inside, finished his coffee, and started getting ready for the day. An hour passed, then another. When Nathan checked again, the car was still there. Now he felt irritated. Who leaves their car like this? Didn't people have any consideration for others? Finally, around noon, Nathan spotted movement next door. A woman emerged from the house adjacent to his. She wore designer sunglasses and carried a large tote bag over her shoulder. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she looked like she belonged in a magazine rather than this modest suburban neighborhood. As she approached the red sports car, Nathan stepped forward. "Excuse me," he called out politely. "Is this your car?" The woman turned to look at him, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, it is," she replied curtly, unlocking the doors with a click of her key fob. "I noticed you've been parked here since this morning," Nathan said, trying to keep his tone friendly. "It's kind of blocking my driveway. I can't get my truck out." The woman shrugged as if the issue was trivial. "Oh, I didn't realize it was a problem. This is a public street, isn't it? You're free to use the rest of the road." Nathan blinked, momentarily taken aback by her dismissive attitude. "Well, yes, but nothing," she interrupted, cutting him off before he could finish. "I'll park wherever I want. If you have an issue with it, maybe you should move somewhere else." With that, she climbed into her car, slammed, the door shut, and drove off. Nathan stood there, stunned. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Was she serious? Who talks like that? Shaking his head, he returned to his house, feeling both annoyed and defeated. He told Michelle about the encounter when she got home from work later that evening. "She sounds awful," Michelle said, frowning. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "I guess I'll try talking to her again tomorrow. Maybe she'll be more reasonable." But the next day brought no change. When Nathan left for work, the red sports car was once again parked across his driveway. And the day after that, the same thing happened. Each time Nathan tried to reason with the woman, whose name he learned was Patricia Klein. But Patricia remained unapologetic, brushing off his complaints with the same cold indifference. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan grew increasingly frustrated. It wasn't just the inconvenience of having to deal with the blocked driveway every morning. It was the principle of the matter. How could someone be so selfish? Didn't Patricia understand that her actions affected other people? Nathan considered calling the police or filing a complaint with the homeowners association, but something held him back. He didn't want to escalate things unnecessarily. Besides, he hoped that eventually Patricia would come to her senses and stop behaving like such a nuisance. Unfortunately, that hope proved to be misplaced. Instead of improving, the situation worsened. Patricia seemed to take pleasure in testing Nathan's patience. On weekends, she hosted loud parties that spilled onto his lawn. Her guests left behind empty beer bottles and cigarette butts, forcing Nathan to clean up after them. Once, he even found deep tire marks gouged into his freshly laid sod. When he confronted her about it, Patricia accused him of being overly sensitive and threatened to call the authorities herself if he didn't leave her alone. By now, Nathan's frustration had reached its peak. He felt trapped in his own home, unable to escape Patricia's constant disruptions. He confided in Michelle one evening, pacing the living room as he vented his anger. "She's not just rude," he said, running a hand through his hair. "She's ruining our lives here. What am I supposed to do?" Michelle listened quietly, her brow furrowed in thought. "You need to stand up for yourself," she said finally. "If talking to her doesn't work, maybe it's time to think of another way to handle this." Her words lingered in Nathan's mind long after their conversation ended. He realized she was right. Something needed to change, and fast. But what could he possibly do to make Patricia respect his boundaries? That question gnawed at him as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Little did he know the answer would come to him in the form of an unexpected inspiration, one that would set off a chain of events neither he nor Patricia could have anticipated. For now, though, Nathan resolved to bide his time. He wouldn't let Patricia win. Somehow, some way, he would find a solution to this mess. Because if there was one thing Nathan Carter hated more than anything, it was being pushed around by someone who thought they were above the rules. Patricia Cline didn't stop. If anything, she grew worse. Her behavior escalated in ways Nathan hadn't thought possible. It wasn't just about the driveway anymore. It was as if she had declared war on him and his family. Every day brought a new headache, a fresh insult to endure. Nathan tried to keep calm, but the stress was eating away at him. One evening, Nathan came home from work to find Patricia hosting yet another party. Music blared from her backyard, loud enough to shake the windows of his house. He sighed deeply and went inside, hoping the noise would die down soon. But it didn't. Hours passed and the music only got louder. By midnight, Nathan couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed a flashlight and marched outside, heading toward Patricia's backyard. The scene was chaotic. Dozens of people filled the space, laughing, drinking, and dancing under string lights strung between trees. Empty bottles littered the ground, and several guests lounged on lawn chairs that Nathan was certain belonged to Patricia's patio set. What caught his attention, however, was the group of people spilling onto his lawn. They were standing near his flower beds, some even stepping on the grass where Michelle had planted delicate flowers just weeks earlier. Nathan spotted Patricia near the center of the chaos, holding a cocktail glass and chatting animatedly with a group of friends. He approached her cautiously, trying not to draw too much attention. "Patricia," he said firmly, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the music. She turned to look at him, her lips curling into a smirk when she saw who it was. "Oh, hey neighbor," she said mockingly. "What brings you here?" "This party needs to end," Nathan replied, doing his best to stay composed. "Your guests are trampling my lawn and the noise is unbearable." Patricia rolled her eyes dramatically. "Relax, will you? Everyone's having fun. You should join us instead of being such a buzzkill." "I'm serious," Nathan insisted. "Turn the music down and get your guests off my property." For a moment, Patricia looked like she might argue further. But then she shrugged, dismissing him entirely. "Fine, whatever. I'll deal with it later." She turned back to her friends, leaving Nathan standing there, fuming. He returned home, slamming the door behind him. Michelle looked up from the couch, concern etched on her face. "What happened?" she asked. "She's impossible," Nathan muttered, pacing the living room. "Her stupid parties are ruining everything, and now they're destroying our yard." Michelle frowned. "Did you call the police?" "No," Nathan admitted. "I don't want to escalate things unless I have to, but honestly, I don't know how much longer I can put up with this." The next morning, Nathan inspected the damage. Sure enough, his flower beds were crushed, and trash littered the edges of his lawn. Cigarette butts and empty cans lay scattered everywhere, and one of his prized rose bushes had been snapped in half. Seeing the destruction made his blood boil. How could someone be so careless? Determined to confront Patricia again, Nathan knocked on her front door later that afternoon. When she answered, she looked annoyed. "What do you want now?" she demanded. "You need to clean up the mess your guests left on my lawn," Nathan said, keeping his tone firm but controlled. "And you need to stop letting them use my property as an extension of your party zone." Patricia laughed bitterly. Are you kidding me right now? Your property is literally just a patch of grass. Stop acting like you own the whole neighborhood. That's not the point, Nathan shot back. You're disrespecting me and my family. If you don't fix this, I'll have no choice but to involve the authorities. Patricia's expression hardened. For the first time, Nathan saw a flicker of anger in her eyes. Go ahead, she sneered. See if I care. But trust me, you won't like what happens if you try to make trouble for me. Her threat hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Nathan didn't respond. He simply turned and walked away, more determined than ever to find a way to deal with her. As he stepped back into his house, he realized something important. Patricia wasn't going to change. She thrived on causing problems for others, and nothing short of drastic action would stop her. That night, unable to sleep, Nathan sat at his computer, scrolling through articles and forums online. He needed ideas, something clever, something unexpected, that would force Patricia to respect his boundaries. At first, he found nothing useful. Most advice focused on calling the police or filing formal complaints, options Nathan wanted to avoid unless absolutely necessary. Then, by sheer chance, he stumbled upon a post about advanced technology used in autonomous vehicles. The article described how drones equipped with sensors and cameras were being developed for various purposes, including security and surveillance. One particular mention caught Nathan's eye: a prototype drone designed to identify unauthorized vehicles and deploy deterrents automatically. Intrigued, Nathan read further. Learning about the potential applications of such devices, an idea began to form in his mind. What if he could build something similar? A device tailored specifically to deal with Patricia's antics. It wouldn't harm anyone, but it would definitely send a message. Excited by the possibility, Nathan jotted down notes and sketched rough designs. He knew he couldn't do it alone. He'd need help turning his vision into reality. The next day, Nathan reached out to an old college friend named Alex Monroe. Alex worked as a robotics engineer at a top research firm and had always been fascinated by innovative projects. Nathan explained the situation over the phone, careful not to reveal too many details about Patricia. Instead, he framed it as a hypothetical challenge. Could Alex help design a small, custom-made drone capable of detecting unauthorized vehicles and deploying a harmless deterrent? To Nathan's relief, Alex was intrigued. That sounds like a fun project, Alex said enthusiastically. Let me think about it and see what we can come up with. Over the following days, Nathan and Alex collaborated closely. They refined the concept, deciding that the drone would be programmed to detect vehicles parked across Nathan's driveway. Once triggered, it would release sticky foam spray onto the offending car, immobilizing it temporarily until cleaned off. The foam would be non-toxic and easy to remove, ensuring no real harm was done. Still, the inconvenience would be significant enough to discourage repeat offenders. As plans took shape, Nathan felt a renewed sense of hope. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his peace of mind. Patricia had pushed him to his limits, but now he had a plan. All he needed to do was wait for the drone to be ready. Until then, he resolved to endure her antics silently, biding his time until the perfect moment arrived. Unbeknownst to Patricia, her days of entitlement and disregard for others were numbered. Nathan smiled grimly as he imagined her reaction. When she finally realized she'd met her match, whatever happened next, one thing was certain: she wouldn't see it coming. Nathan couldn't believe how quickly things were coming together. With Alex's expertise, the plan to build the drone was progressing faster than he'd expected. They worked tirelessly over several weeks, fine-tuning every detail until the device was ready. The drone itself was compact but packed with advanced technology. Its body was sleek and lightweight, designed to blend into its surroundings while remaining nearly invisible during operation. Equipped with motion sensors, cameras, and a small reservoir of sticky foam spray, it was programmed to detect any vehicle parked across Nathan's driveway and respond accordingly. Alex explained the mechanics behind the drone one evening as they tested it in his workshop. It uses infrared sensors to scan the area, he said, pointing to a row of tiny lenses along the drone's underside. If it detects an object that matches the size and shape of a car in your designated no parking zone, it triggers the foam dispenser. And the foam? Nathan asked, inspecting the small tank attached to the drone. Completely harmless, Alex assured him. It's sticky enough to immobilize the tires temporarily, but it won't damage the paint or cause permanent issues. A good pressure wash will clean it off, though it'll take some effort. Nathan nodded, satisfied. He didn't want anyone getting hurt or facing serious consequences because of this. His goal wasn't to ruin Patricia's life. It was simply to teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. Once the drone passed all its tests, Alex helped Nathan install it near his garage. They positioned it discreetly, ensuring it wouldn't attract attention from neighbors or passers-by. Nathan set up a mobile app connected to the drone so he could monitor its activity remotely. If Patricia blocked his driveway again, the drone would activate automatically, deploying the foam without requiring Nathan's direct involvement. The first few days after installation felt strange for Nathan. Part of him hoped Patricia would suddenly change her behavior and stop parking in his driveway altogether. But deep down, he knew better. Sure enough, late one Friday night, Nathan received a notification on his phone. The drone had detected an unauthorized vehicle. He glanced out the window and saw Patricia's red sports car gleaming under the streetlight, parked squarely across his driveway. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves. Was this really happening? Would the plan work as intended? Minutes later, the drone whirred to life, its rotors spinning silently as it hovered above Patricia's car. Nathan watched from his bedroom window, holding his breath as the device positioned itself directly over the vehicle. Then, with a soft hiss, the foam began spraying onto the windshield, hood, and tires. Within moments, the once pristine sports car was covered in a thick layer of gooey white foam. Patricia must have heard the faint hum of the drone because she stormed outside shortly afterward, still dressed in her pajamas. She froze when she saw her car, her mouth dropping open in shock. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the mess. Then, predictably, she started screaming. "What the hell is this?" she shouted, throwing her hands up in frustration. "Who did this to my car?" Her loud voice drew the attention of nearby neighbors. A few people peeked out of their windows or stepped onto their porches to see what the commotion was about. Some looked amused, whispering to each other and exchanging glances. Others pulled out their phones to film the scene, capturing Patricia's outrage for social media. Nathan stayed hidden, watching everything unfold from the safety of his house. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt, not because he regretted teaching Patricia a lesson, but because he worried about how far this might go. What if she figured out it was him? What if she retaliated even harder? Patricia spent the next hour pacing around her car, muttering angrily under her breath. She called a towing service, but when they arrived, they refused to tow the vehicle without cleaning off the foam first. Exasperated, Patricia ended up calling a professional car detailer, who promised to arrive early the next morning. By then, word of the incident had spread throughout the neighborhood. Everyone knew about the mysterious foam attack on Patricia's car, though no one seemed particularly upset about it. In fact, many residents quietly celebrated the event. Patricia had always been difficult to deal with, and seeing her finally face some consequences brought a sense of satisfaction. The next day, Michelle teased Nathan gently as they ate breakfast. "You know something about that foam, don't you?" she said with a sly smile. Nathan shrugged, playing innocent. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Michelle chuckled. "Sure you don't? Either way, I think it worked. Did you notice how quiet it was last night? No parties, no music, blaring nothing." Nathan grinned. Maybe she learned her lesson, but deep down he knew better. Patricia wasn't the type to back down easily. This was only the beginning. True to form, Patricia didn't let the foam incident slide. Over the next few days, she became more determined than ever to catch whoever was responsible. She hired a private investigator to stake out Nathan's property, hoping to gather evidence against him. Cameras were installed around her house, pointed toward his driveway and garage. She even went door to door, accusing various neighbors of sabotage. Despite her efforts, Patricia found nothing concrete. The drone operated silently and efficiently, leaving no trace of its presence. Each time she parked in Nathan's driveway, the same thing happened. The foam appeared, covering her car and forcing her to call the detailer again. It was maddening for her, but for Nathan it was oddly satisfying. Still, Nathan knew he had to be careful. Patricia was unpredictable, and if she discovered the truth, there was no telling how she might react. To protect himself, he made sure to keep a low profile. He avoided confronting her directly and acted surprised whenever she accused him of being involved. Meanwhile, Alex continued tweaking the drone's programming to ensure it remained undetectable. As the weeks passed, the neighborhood dynamic shifted noticeably. Without Patricia's constant disruptions, life on Maple Street returned to normal. People started spending more time outdoors, chatting with each other and enjoying the peace. Even those who hadn't been directly affected by Patricia's antics expressed relief at her sudden absence from community gatherings. For Nathan, the change was profound. He felt lighter, freer, as though a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. For the first time since moving to Maple Street, he and Michelle could truly relax in their new home. The tension that had plagued them for months was gone, replaced by a sense of calm they hadn't realized they'd missed. Yet despite the positive outcome, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Patricia was still out there, plotting her next move. And while the drone had given him the upper hand for now, he knew she wouldn't give up easily. Sooner or later, she would strike back, and when she did, Nathan needed to be prepared. In the meantime, he continued monitoring the situation closely, keeping tabs on Patricia's activities through subtle means. He also reached out to Alex, occasionally, discussing potential upgrades to the drone in case they needed to adapt to new challenges. Together, they brainstormed ways to improve the device's stealth capabilities and expand its range of detection. Little did Nathan know, however, that the real twist in this story was yet to come. Patricia's desperation to uncover the truth would lead her down a path she never anticipated, one that would expose secrets far bigger than a simple feud over a driveway. And when those secrets came to light, everyone on Maple Street would be forced to reconsider what they thought they knew about their seemingly ordinary neighborhood. Patricia Klein was not used to being humiliated. She prided herself on being in control of her life, her possessions, and especially her reputation. But now, standing beside her once pristine red sports car, covered in sticky white foam for the third time that week, she felt powerless. It was infuriating. Who dared to do this to her, and why hadn't she caught them yet? Her frustration boiled over into anger, and anger turned into action. Patricia wasn't about to let whoever was behind these attacks get away with it. She had already hired a private investigator named Greg, a wiry man in his late 40s who promised to get to the bottom of this. Greg spent hours staking out Nathan's house, setting up hidden cameras around the neighborhood, and interviewing neighbors under the guise of gathering information. Yet despite his efforts, he found nothing conclusive. Whoever was targeting Patricia knew how to cover their tracks. Nathan, meanwhile, tried to act as normal as possible. He went about his daily routine, going to work, mowing the lawn on weekends, chatting with Michelle over dinner, all while keeping one eye on Patricia's movements. He monitored the drone's activity through the app Alex had designed, ensuring it operated flawlessly every time Patricia blocked his driveway. So far, everything was working perfectly. But Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia was closing in on him. One evening, as Nathan sat in his living room flipping through TV channels, Greg knocked on his door. Startled, Nathan opened it cautiously. "Can I help you?" he asked, feigning confusion. Greg introduced himself and flashed a badge. "I'm investigating some vandalism incidents involving your neighbor, Ms. Klein. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Nathan hesitated but nodded. "Sure, come in." Inside, Greg wasted no time getting to the point. "Ms. Klein believes someone in the neighborhood is deliberately sabotaging her property. Have you noticed anything unusual lately?" Nathan shook, his head doing his best to appear calm. Not really. I've seen her car covered in that weird foam a couple of times, but I don't know who's responsible. Honestly, it kind of makes me glad. I've had my own issues with her parking habits. Greg raised an eyebrow. Issues? She keeps blocking my driveway, Nathan explained. It's been a problem since we moved in. I've talked to her about it, but she doesn't seem to care. The investigator scribbled something in his notebook before asking more questions. Did Nathan own any drones? Had he installed security cameras recently? Was there anyone he suspected might be involved? Nathan answered carefully, avoiding anything that could raise suspicion. By the time Greg left, Nathan was sweating slightly, though he hoped he'd played his part convincingly. Later that night, Michelle voiced her concerns. "Do you think he suspects you?" she asked, biting her lip. "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But even if he does, he has no proof. As long as the drone stays hidden, we're safe." Despite his confidence, Nathan decided to take extra precautions. He asked Alex to add new features to the drone, including enhanced noise-canceling rotors and additional camouflage coatings. Alex also programmed the device to self-destruct if tampered with, ensuring it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. These upgrades gave Nathan peace of mind, but only temporarily. Meanwhile, Patricia grew increasingly desperate. With Greg unable to produce results, she took matters into her own hands. She began prowling the neighborhood at odd hours, searching for clues. One night, she snuck onto Nathan's property, flashlight in hand, and inspected his garage and backyard. Fortunately, Nathan had anticipated this possibility and kept the drone well hidden. All Patricia found were gardening tools and stacks of old boxes. Frustrated but undeterred, Patricia turned to social media, posting dramatic updates about the vandalism she claimed to be experiencing. She described the foam attacks in detail, accusing her neighbors of jealousy and spite. Some people sympathized with her, but many others saw through her act. Comments flooded in, calling her out for her entitled behavior and suggesting she deserved what was happening. "You reap what you sow," one commenter wrote bluntly. "Maybe stop parking in other people's driveways," another chimed in. Patricia deleted most of the negative comments, but the damage was done. Her attempts to play the victim only made her look worse. Still, she refused to give up. If she couldn't catch the culprit outright, she reasoned, maybe she could provoke them into making a mistake. Her opportunity came sooner than expected. One Saturday morning, Patricia parked her car across Nathan's driveway again, this time leaving a note on the windshield. "Catch me if you can." Nathan read the note and sighed. He should have known she'd try something like this. Party eye of him wanted to ignore it, to let her sit there until the foam hit her car again, but curiosity got the better way. Instead, he sent Michelle to run errands while he stayed home, watching closely as the drone activated. When the foam sprayed onto Patricia's car, she bolted outside almost immediately, shouting and waving her arms. This time, however, she didn't call the detailer or the towing service. Instead, she marched straight toward Nathan's house, pounding on his front door. Nathan opened it slowly, pretending to be surprised. "What's going on?" "You know exactly what's going on," Patricia snapped, jabbing a finger at him. "This is your doing, isn't it? You've been messing with my car." "That's ridiculous," Nathan replied evenly. "Why would I waste my time doing something like that?" "Because you hate me," Patricia shouted. "You've hated me ever since I moved in. Admit it." Her accusations drew the attention of several neighbors who gathered outside to watch the argument unfold. Nathan remained calm, knowing that losing his temper would only make things worse. "Look, I don't know what's happening to your car," he said firmly, "but I suggest you stop parking in my driveway if you want it to stop." Patricia glared at him, seething with rage. For a moment, it seemed like she might lunge at him. Then, without another word, she stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. That night, Nathan received a text from Alex. "Just checking in," it read. "How's everything holding up?" Nathan smiled faintly as he typed his response. "So far, so good. But I think we're reaching the endgame." He wasn't wrong. Patricia's relentless pursuit of answers led her down a path she never anticipated. While digging into potential suspects, Greg uncovered something shocking. Not about Nathan, but about Patricia herself. Hidden beneath her polished exterior lay secrets that would change everything, for both her and the entire neighborhood. Greg, the private investigator, wasn't having much luck finding out who was behind the foam attacks on Patricia's car. No matter how hard he looked, there was no direct evidence tying anyone in the neighborhood to the incidents. But as he dug deeper into Patricia's life, something strange began to catch his attention. It started with small details, things that didn't quite add up. For example, when Greg reviewed traffic records at Patricia's request, he noticed an unusual pattern. Over the past few years, Patricia had accumulated dozens of parking tickets, yet none of them had ever been paid. When he cross-referenced these unpaid fines with court documents, he discovered that many of the tickets had mysteriously disappeared from the system. Someone had tampered with official records, making it seem as though Patricia had resolved her violations when she clearly hadn't. Curious, Greg decided to dig further. He pulled up Patricia's employment history and found another inconsistency. According to her resume, she claimed to have worked as a financial manager for a large corporation until recently. However, when Greg contacted the company, they denied any knowledge of her working there. Not only that, but they informed him that their accounts department had flagged several suspicious transactions linked to a name matching hers during an internal audit years ago. This revelation sent Greg down a rabbit hole. He spent hours combing through old news articles, legal filings, and public records. What he uncovered shocked even him. Patricia Klein wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was involved in something far more serious. Years earlier, while working for a different firm, she had allegedly embezzled thousands of dollars by falsifying expense reports and siphoning funds into offshore accounts. Though the company eventually caught wind of her activities, Patricia managed to avoid prosecution by bribing officials and fleeing the state before charges could be filed. But the story didn't end there. Greg traced the source of Patricia's wealth back to those stolen funds. Everything, the fancy house, the expensive car, the designer clothes, was financed by money she had no right to possess. Worse still, she continued evading accountability by manipulating people and systems to suit her needs. Her behavior in the neighborhood suddenly made sense. Patricia believed she was untouchable, entitled to do whatever she wanted without consequences. Armed with this information, Greg knew he had stumbled onto something big. However, he also realized that exposing Patricia's crimes was beyond his job description. His client had hired him to investigate vandalism, not uncover decades-old fraud. Still, Greg couldn't ignore what he'd found. After consulting with his supervisor, he decided to turn over all the evidence to the authorities anonymously. Let them handle it, he thought. They're better equipped to deal with someone like her. Unbeknownst to Greg, Nathan Carter received a call from Alex Monroe late one evening. "Hey, I've got some interesting news," Alex said cryptically. "Remember how you mentioned wanting to stay updated on anything involving Patricia?" Nathan frowned. "Yeah, why? Did something happen?" "Well," Alex replied, lowering his voice slightly, "it seems our friend has been keeping secrets. Big ones." Alex went on to explain what he had learned through his own research. Like Greg, Alex had grown curious about Patricia's antics and decided to look into her background. Using advanced algorithms and data mining tools, he pieced together fragments of information that painted a damning picture of her past. From fraudulent financial dealings to a string of unpaid fines, Patricia's life was riddled with illegal activity. "I figured you'd want to know," Alex concluded. "What do you plan to do with this info?" Nathan sat silently for a moment, processing everything. He hadn't expected things to escalate this way. All he had wanted was to teach Patricia a lesson, to make her stop treating others like obstacles in her path. Now, faced with the truth about her crimes, he felt conflicted. Should he step back and let the authorities take care of her, or should he intervene somehow? After weighing his options, Nathan made a decision. He drafted an anonymous tip and sent it to both local law enforcement and federal agencies, attaching copies of the evidence Alex had gathered. He didn't include any mention of himself or the drone. Instead, he framed the message as a concerned, citizen bringing attention to potential wrongdoing. Once the email was sent, Nathan deleted all traces of it from his devices, ensuring no connection could be traced back to him. Days passed, and life on Maple Street seemed quieter than usual. Patricia appeared to be laying low, perhaps sensing that trouble was brewing. She stopped hosting parties, avoided confrontations with her neighbors, and kept her car parked safely in her own driveway. For the first time in months, Nathan felt a glimmer of hope that peace might finally prevail. Then, one sunny afternoon, federal agents arrived at Patricia's house. 2 unmarked cars pulled up to her curb, and several men in suits stepped out, badges visible on their belts. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispering excitedly as the agents knocked on Patricia's door. When she answered, her expression shifted from confusion to panic within seconds. "Patricia Klein?" one of the agents asked sternly. "We need you to come with us." "What is this about?" Patricia demanded, trying to sound indignant but failing to hide her fear. "I haven't done anything wrong." The agents ignored her protests, reading her rights aloud as they escorted her to one of the cars. Cameras flashed as reporters appeared seemingly out of nowhere, eager to document the arrest of a woman accused of embezzlement, fraud, and corruption. By evening, the story dominated local news outlets, with headlines blaring phrases like "entitled neighbor exposed" and "suburban scandal unveiled." As the days turned into weeks, the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. Without Patricia's toxic presence, Maple Street returned to its peaceful state. People began spending more time outdoors, chatting with each other, and enjoying the serenity they had missed for so long. Even Michelle commented on how nice it felt to wake up without the constant threat of chaos looming overhead. For Nathan, the resolution brought mixed emotions. On one hand, he was glad that justice had been served, not just for him but for everyone who had suffered under Patricia's selfishness. On the other hand, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Had he crossed a line by meddling in her affairs? Was it really his place to expose her secrets? Michelle reassured him when he voiced these concerns. "You did what you had to do," she said gently. "She hurt a lot of people, and now she's facing the consequences. That's not your fault. It's hers." Nathan nodded slowly, accepting her words. Deep down, he knew she was right. Sometimes standing up for yourself meant taking risks, even if those risks led to unexpected outcomes. And while he hoped never to find himself in such a situation again, he couldn't deny that he had learned valuable lessons along the way. In the end, the ordeal changed Nathan and the entire neighborhood in ways he hadn't anticipated. It reminded everyone that appearances could be deceiving, that kindness mattered more than wealth, and that sometimes the simplest acts of defiance could spark meaningful change. As autumn leaves began to fall, casting golden hues over Maple Street, Nathan stood in his driveway, gazing at the quiet road ahead. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly at home. Life on Maple Street had changed dramatically since Patricia Klein's arrest. The once tense atmosphere dissolved into a quiet harmony that the residents hadn't realized they were missing. For Nathan Carter, this newfound peace felt surreal. Every morning he stepped outside to find the driveway clear, a small but significant reminder of how far things had come. No longer did he have to worry about confrontations or late-night disruptions. Instead, he could focus on enjoying the home he and Michelle had worked so hard to build. The neighbors, too, seemed happier. People who had previously kept to themselves now greeted each other warmly when passing by. Mrs. Harper from across the street invited everyone over for a backyard barbecue one Saturday afternoon, something she hadn't done in years. Even Mr. Lewis, the grumpy old man 2 houses down, cracked a smile when someone complimented his rose bushes. It was as if Patricia's absence had lifted a weight off the entire neighborhood, allowing them to reconnect and rediscover what it meant to live in a community. Nathan often thought about how quickly things had unraveled for Patricia. One moment, she was strutting around like she owned the place. The next, federal agents were leading her away in handcuffs. The news coverage painted her as a cautionary tale, a woman whose greed and arrogance had finally caught up with her. Reporters uncovered more details about her crimes, revealing that she had been living on borrowed time for years. The stolen money, the bribes, the lies, it all added up to a life built on shaky foundations. And when those foundations collapsed, there was nothing left to hold her up. Despite everything, Nathan couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for Patricia. He didn't condone her actions, nor did he regret the role he'd played in exposing her secrets. But seeing her dragged away in front of cameras and reporters made him realize just how isolated she must have been. Her wealth and possessions hadn't brought her happiness. They had only masked the emptiness beneath. In a way, Nathan thought Patricia had been punishing herself long before anyone else got involved. Michelle noticed the shift in Nathan's demeanor as the weeks went. "Bye. You seem different lately," she said one evening while they sat together on the couch. "More relaxed, I guess." "I think I am," Nathan replied, smiling faintly. "It's weird, isn't it? All this time, I was so focused on dealing with Patricia that I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying around. Now that it's over, I feel lighter." Michelle nodded. "Good. You deserve it. We both do." As the days turned into months, Nathan began dismantling the drone. Though it had served its purpose brilliantly, he no longer needed it. With Patricia gone, there was no threat of blocked driveways or late-night parties spilling onto their lawn. Alex offered to take the device back to his workshop, where he planned to repurpose its components for future projects. Nathan agreed, feeling a mix of pride and nostalgia as he packed it away. The drone had been more than just a tool. It had been a symbol of his determination to stand up for himself and reclaim his peace of mind. Still, Nathan knew he couldn't rely on gadgets forever. If another difficult neighbor moved in someday, he would have to face the challenge head-on, using reason and patience rather than technology. He hoped it wouldn't come to that, but he also understood that conflict was sometimes unavoidable. What mattered most was how you handled it, and whether you stayed true to yourself in the process. One day, as Nathan tended to the flower bed Michelle had planted earlier in the year, a moving truck pulled up to Patricia's old house. A young couple stepped out, introducing themselves as Sarah and Daniel. They were polite and friendly, eager to meet their new neighbors. Nathan welcomed them warmly, offering to help carry boxes inside. As he chatted with Sarah and Daniel, he realized how refreshing it was to interact with people who genuinely cared about being good neighbors. Over the following weeks, Nathan made an effort to get to know Sarah and Daniel better. They shared stories about their lives, exchanged gardening tips, and even invited Nathan and Michelle over for dinner one night. It was a stark contrast to the strained relationship he'd had with Patricia. Where she had been selfish and entitled, Sarah and Daniel were kind and considerate. Their presence reminded Nathan of the importance of treating others with respect and of choosing your battles wisely. As autumn settled in, painting the trees with vibrant shades of orange and red, Nathan reflected on everything that had happened. The ordeal with Patricia had tested his patience, pushed him to his limits, and forced him to think creatively. But it had also taught him valuable lessons about resilience, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. He realized now that life wasn't always fair, but sometimes with a little ingenuity and determination, you could tip the scales in your favor. One crisp evening, as Nathan and Michelle sat on their porch watching the sunset, Michelle broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder what Patricia's doing now?" Nathan shrugged. "Not really. Whatever happens to her, it's out of our hands. She made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences." Michelle smiled. "I'm proud of you, you know. You handled everything so well." "Thanks," Nathan said, squeezing her hand. "But honestly, I couldn't have done it without you. Or Alex. This wasn't just my fight. It was ours." They sat quietly for a while, savoring the stillness of the evening. The neighborhood was alive with gentle sounds. The rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the occasional laugh of children playing nearby. It was a reminder of how beautiful life could be when people chose to coexist peacefully. And Nathan knew that the story of Patricia Cline would fade into memory, becoming nothing more than a chapter in the history of Maple Street. What remained was the bond between neighbors, the joy of living in a place where kindness triumphed over selfishness and the satisfaction of knowing that justice, no matter how long it took, always found its way. For Nathan and Michelle, that was enough.